Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April 7th, 2020 meeting of the Montgomery County Council. Today is our first meeting using remote video technology. Last week we used Skype, and this week we're using Zoom. And I hope my colleagues and the public will be patient as we once again try new technology. The Council continues to work actively, although remotely, to do all we can to address our community's needs and concerns during the crisis and to be transparent as we do business. The Council continues to keep those who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and those who have lost loved ones to the virus in our thoughts and prayers as we go about our work. The Council is committed to providing all the resources necessary to battle this global pandemic. For today's meeting, I'm going to ask each of my colleagues to text me when they wish to speak, just like they did last meeting. And as we begin, I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll of the Council. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Council President, I don't believe she's on the line.
Okay, would someone else like to call, or would you like me to call the roll?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Would you, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll of the Council?
Yes, sir. Mr. Glass?
Present.
Mr. Girondo?
Present.
Mr. Rice?
Present.
Ms. Nabato?
Present.
Mr. Friedson? Mr. Friedson?
He's there, but he's not, he's on mute.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Reamer?
Present.
What am I missing?
Councilmember Redwood Middleton,
Albanaz.
I'm present. Yep.
Thank you. And Mr. Katz?
I'm here. Was everyone called? Craig, were you called?
Selena, Tom Hucker's here as well.
Mr. Hooker, sorry.
Which you did, I believe, Madam Clerk, was you went what was normally our left side of the dais, but didn't get to the right side of the dais. So, and it's not to say that one's the correct side; it was the right side. Yeah.
I think we got
you.
everyone.
Thank you very much. All are present. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We're going to begin today's meeting with an update on Council operations from our Executive Director, Marlene Michelson.
Thank you. The Council office is currently closed to the public for safety reasons, and during this time, we are asking all of our employees to work remotely as well. And unfortunately, every time the Council has broadcast a session, we do need to have a core group of staff here, and therefore, when you're in session, we do have staff in the building, and we are trying all we can to minimize the time that we need to do that. We are very concerned about how the public can communicate with the Council during this crisis, and so I wanted to alert you to several new changes we have for people to be able to provide testimony. First, we've now created a new way people can submit remote testimony to the Council's website, including written testimony, audio testimony, and video testimony. And there's now on the Council's homepage a banner that provides a link to enable you to do that. It is also located where it says sign up for testimony. And the testimony, in whatever form it's provided, will be available for members of our public to view as well, which is a great example of how sometimes a crisis like this can actually move us forward in things we can accomplish, because up until this point we really did not have a way for the testimony to view, for the public to view testimony. So anyone now will have access to it on the website. If it's an item on which the council is taking action, we're asking them to post the testimony at least 2 days in advance so that the council has time to look at the testimony. Beginning on April 16th, we will also have the ability for people to telephone in on public hearings for a live public hearing on key issues. On April 16th, there will be 2 public hearings for the operating budget, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. Information on how to sign up for those hearings should be available tomorrow. So we continue to look for new ways to make sure our public can engage with the council, even as they cannot get into the building. And of course, don't forget there's always the option, the old-fashioned option of mail, which we still accept. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Craig Howard now, who's going to provide some other updates.
Thank you, Marlene. Good afternoon, everyone. There's, of course, been a tremendous amount of work going on across a wide range of COVID-19 topics and issues. So we did want to take a moment this afternoon to summarize the actions taken by the council to date to ensure everyone's aware of what's going on with some of these key initiatives that total over $36 million in assistance the council has approved over the last couple of weeks. To begin with, the council adopted Expedited Bill 16-20 to create the Public Health Emergency Grant Program. This program will provide emergency grants for local businesses and nonprofits with 100 employees or less that are struggling to survive the economic impact of COVID-19. The program will provide grants of up to $75,000 per business or nonprofit organization, and will also provide mini grants of up to $2,500 for teleworking technology and software. In addition, the law requires that at least 1/4 of the total funding go towards restaurants or retail storefront businesses. Along with adopting the bill, the council also approved a $20 million special appropriation for the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, and under the regulations I mentioned, at least $5 million of this initial appropriation will go towards restaurants and retail storefront businesses. The executive branch is currently in the process of developing an application process for this fund and the reviewing and creating the regulations to review applications. The council also approved a $10 million special appropriation to help hospitals meet the urgent healthcare needs of residents and to make emergency purchases to expand healthcare capacity in advance of a potential surge on the hospitals. The council approved a $6 million special appropriation for direct emergency assistance. $5 million of this will go towards direct financial assistance for county residents, and $1 million will go to support safety net services for vulnerable residents. The council approved a $260,000 special appropriation to man a food center to provide needed food to families, and the council also approved a $250,000 special appropriation to provide hotel or motel rooms for medical staff and first responders who need places to stay. In addition, the council did adopt a resolution on options for the approval of the FY21 operating budget, and that resolution directed staff to provide the council with different budget scenarios to consider, including what a same services type of budget might look like. Staff is working on this task and will provide an initial report back to the council as part of a broader budget overview scheduled for April 16th. And that concludes kind of the summary of some of the key initiatives. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gene Smith to provide an update on the constant yield tax rate.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Mr. Howard said, the council has received a lot of correspondence related to the constant yield tax rate, so I'll just make 3 points regarding it briefly. Sorry, I was looking at my video. The first point is that the state law requires that the county calculate the constant yield tax rate each year. This rate is defined as the rate that would produce the same revenues as the previous fiscal year. The state law is very specific about when and how the council can approve a rate that exceeds the constant yield tax rate, even by a fraction of a penny. The council, as in prior years, complied with the state's advertising and public hearing requirements earlier this month. The second point is that the constant yield tax rate only applies to one tax rate amongst the many decisions that the council will make during the operating budget. For example, the council will also consider tax rates in the context of Section 305 of the county charter. The charter rate is different than the constant yield tax rate. It will always be the case that the council has numerous decisions with the operating budget, but the consensual tax rate is the only one that has specific advertisement requirements in the state law. And the third point and final point is that combines the first two is because of this requirement by the state for advertising and because of how the consensual tax rate is related to as only one decision related to the many, the council almost always advertises a higher rate in April than the one it approves in June to provide flexibility. I stress that the advertised rate in April is different than the approved rate that the council passes in June. Advertising a higher rate in April does not indicate that the council will set a higher approved rate in June. The advertised rate indicates the maximum rate the council will consider in the budget. The approved rate is almost always significantly less than the advertised rate. For example, last year's advertised rate was 5.4 cents greater than the approved rate. The public hearing for this item is on April 21st at 1:30 p.m. As Ms. Michelson noted previously, there are numerous ways for the community to comment on the advertised rate. The council has already received numerous correspondences that will be aggregated for the public hearing staff report for that day. Thank you. I'm available if the council has any questions.
That's the end of the
Ms.
staff
Michaels,
presentation.
sorry, Ms. I did not realize that I was on mute, and I
Yes.
must have done that on purpose, because I didn't do it. Mrs. Michelson, did you have anything else to add?
No, that's the end of the staff summary, and we turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
Very good. I do have a few other statements, but I do know Councilmember Friedson wanted to. Did you want to ask Gene a question, or was this something in general?
No, I just wanted to make one more comment for Gene. I appreciate the statement about what that is and isn't. There's been some confusion and misunderstanding about that requirement in state law of how we want to post. I think the one challenge, as was noted by Mr. Smith, was the language that's used, which implies an intention of the county council of a direction that we may or may not be going in, when in fact that's not the case. That's just the required language as set forth by the state. I think that's an important point. And the other point that I wanted to make, which I think is important, is the rate that was advertised is the rate of the recommended budget as proposed by the county executive on April 16th. That is the budget that we have made some significant comments on, including 8 of 9 council members indicating that there wasn't an interest in going above the charter limit for a property tax increase in a time of crisis. And I just thought it was important that we understand that the rate that is being used is the rate based on the executive's proposed budget, which we will start to take up next week, that there's been, and that the language that is used is the required language and not necessarily language that indicates the intention of the council. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer, you had a comment on taxes.
I just want to use the same point. Thank you. We're advertising these rates because procedurally, this is how we do the budget process. It does not indicate the intent of the county council, and council has been very firm on taking the position that this is not the time to raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I call on my colleagues for updates on things that everyone has been working on, I want to provide a brief COVID-19 update, since we do not have Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard, our very fine partners, here with us this afternoon. The county continues to work in partnership with the state and local hospitals on surge planning. We understand that initial steps have been taken towards meeting the identified need for 600 additional beds, as well as other needed supplies. Case data continues to be updated every day on the state and county website. Cases have continued to rise in both the state and the county, and tragically, the number of deaths has increased as well. Today, in collaboration with the state, the county stood up a drive-through testing site at the White Oak Vehicle Emissions Inspection Station. As with the drive-through testing sites across the state, this will be as for appointment-only testing. Next week, the council will receive an update from Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard, as well as an update on communication efforts. And Councilmember Rice, you are asking to speak, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I just wanted to give my colleagues an update in terms of MCPS, what we're doing in terms of distance learning, as well as our food situation as we approach the Passover and Easter holidays. As far as MCPS and distance learning, it's been an up and down process. For those of you who have children, you know there were some initial concerns about some of the Zoom privacy issues, making sure that these classrooms were, these distance learning classrooms were secure, that they were able to stand up and promote the right teaching methodology that teachers needed. And teachers really just wanted to practice and get an idea of what something like this would look like and how it would work. I can tell you that there are some teachers that are certainly doing it better than others, some who've already been well aware of the practices and processes necessary to do something like this with distance learning, and there are some who haven't really had the experience with the technology, and it's been a challenge for them. But I will say overall that I think the system has done a very good job of continuing to maintain a continuum of education. Now, what does that mean? For some of our younger students, it certainly means that things are a little bit different. It means working through packets, some assignments. Sometimes there may be some distance learning with actual interaction between the students, but for the most part, a lot of it is going to be working through packets. As you get to middle and high school, that's where you're seeing more of the Zoom classrooms that are stood up to where they're actually doing instruction and going through actual lesson plans, going through some new information in some of those classes, and actually conducting some quizzes and assignments and other kinds of things like that as well. So it's exciting to see that there is a potential of us to do something that really is quite advanced when you look at the short period of time that we had to stand something like this up. Keep in mind, other jurisdictions are just rolling out Chromebooks and other devices this past week. And here we are already in this. And so I know everyone expects Montgomery County to be a leader. Everybody expects Montgomery County to be the best. The reality is that when it comes to something like this is new territory for everyone. And I can tell you even our institutions of higher education are facing the same sorts of challenges in standing up distance education for all students.
Maybe the phone dropped. They're still on.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID.
And families and
This meeting has been
Oh. I locked it. So can you? Here, I'll put it right there. I'm gonna unlock. It's gonna show on the screen. Are we still showing response or did they bring it back up?
Zoom. Enter your meeting ID. Enter your part.
Okay. And then there's the mystery caller.
Yeah, right.
You are muted.
Are you hearing that there's
You are
still?
unmuted.
Let me check.
This is Gene. I have the video on, and there is no voice and volume on the video. There's just the 9 council members.
So you see us, but you don't.
President, the broadcast
You don't hear us either?
has restarted.
I couldn't hear you, Sonia. What did you say?
Mr. President, we have audio.
And it is live on the broadcast. The audio is live on television as well.
Now, thank you. Now, did they not hear anything that Craig had to say, or
Mr. Rice.
does anybody know?
Councilmember Rice was talking about how school is different for high schoolers.
Okay. So,
Okay.
I'm going to start from there and just say that certainly when we look at what's happening with our high school students as well as our middle school students, they're actually more engaged and involved when it comes to the Zoom interaction, actually doing some of the classes in terms of giving out new information and also doing some of the quizzing and testing. I've seen it. The great thing is I've got middle school and a high school student, one that's in AP classes and some other classes. And even, I will tell you, even in the health class, they're actually asking students to submit videos of them participating in active activity. Something, again, that's creative, but is certainly a way in which, and then for those students who may not have the ability to do video, they can certainly just tell the instructor what it is that they did and how they were healthy and active that particular day and log that. Those are the kinds of things that we're having to do in this new sort of situation we find ourselves in. And so from that perspective, again, I just am really appreciative of the teachers. I know that this is incredibly hard for them, but I think they're doing the best that they can in the circumstances we find ourselves in to make sure that we're supporting our children. One of the most important things I will say is to encourage our kids to continue to interact. And so for our younger children, even if you have the ability to FaceTime with a friend, something along those lines, just to do that for a few minutes a day really does make a difference when it comes to the mental well-being of our children, being that they're not isolated. Certainly having siblings is great, but they have friends that they forge friendships with. And just as we interact here on Zoom and we're talking to each other through all of our meetings, our children need that as well. And so I want to encourage our parents to make sure they're trying to do that to the best of their ability also. Again, when it comes to the food situation, certainly from that, I really can't thank MANA, Women Who Care Ministries, KIND, Nourish Now, all of our different food pantries that are out there ensuring that our families are fed and that our children have the meals necessary to continue. This is incredibly important, and we know we passed the emergency appropriation for MANA to make sure that we have the SMART Act. Having that's going to be there now on the Wednesday and Thursday, as well as then having distribution on Saturday, will carry us through this holiday weekend and make sure that there's continuity in terms of having food for our families who need it the most. So I'll stop there and turn it over to anyone if they have any questions or have any additional comments. But again, I want to thank my colleagues for all of their great work, their insistence in terms of working in their own individual communities as district council members or at-large council members, really stepping up and making sure that our kids are at the forefront of a lot of what we do. And so I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you as well.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody for all the work that has taken place up until now. But I first want to start by thanking our residents. I know this has been a very difficult time, but we have heard that everybody is cooperating in great measure, and we need to continue to send that message throughout the county. We are not at a point yet where we can begin to relax anything. So we want to continue to encourage all of our residents to maintain social distancing and to stay home, and just for them to know that we continue to communicate as much as possible throughout this global unprecedented crisis. I wanted to just share a couple of items that I know I've worked on with many of you. I'm going to start just with my GEO chair hat, and of course we're starting our work regarding our budget, and I really appreciate the team that has put together already a few options and with how we're going to approach the budget. But just to recap, of course, all of us signed on to and voted for the resolution that calls for restraint. We understand that we don't yet know what the impact of this pandemic is going to be regarding our revenues, but we also know that many of our departments and nonprofit organizations, et cetera, are super anxious. And so continuity of operations is so important, and I appreciate the work that has gone so far to begin to draft scenarios in this respect. I also want to just point out that in many ways we may be optimistic, and if for some reason I'm hoping that we don't have to undertake any kind of savings plan, but if we do, I just want to say that obviously this is something the executive would have to send over and would have to make determinations. But for now, I believe that we need to move forward with entertaining scenarios for a FY20 type level budget with MOE and whatever additional expenditures, of course, should be COVID-19 related. So I appreciate the work that has gone into this already. I also wanted to share that, of course, many of us have been really eager and anxious to receive the application process and all the information from the administration regarding the relief package for our small businesses and for nonprofits. But most specifically, of course, conversations that I've had with Mr. Fletcher and also LEDC, Mr. Daniel Parra from the Economic Development Corporation regarding those small businesses that are perhaps immigrant owned or folks who do not necessarily have a lot of information or interact too actively with us. And they have assured me that they're working on this and that they have already stood up that kind of capacity, which is, I think, great because we need that more than ever during this time. Also, conversation with that I've had with many of you. I know talking with Councilmember Albornoz and Councilmember Hucker about, of course, what we know it's inevitable, which is that we may have to consider additional resources, perhaps targeted to small, restaurants or retail, and also, and there was a memo that I sent on April 2nd, the notion that we do have still quite a lot of need with vulnerable families, and I want to just point that out that Montgomery County, what we did last week, it feels like a year, with regards to the cash emergency assistance, that was really important because we do know that we have so many families in our county that really do need to have access to this kind of these types of assistance. But of course, I think we're going to probably need to do more. And in that memorandum that I sent on the 2nd, I pointed out that we should explore the mechanisms that we've used in the past with our community foundation to see whether we can also leverage our amazing, generous philanthropic community. And Councilmember Albornoz will, I'm sure, share that he's already had some conversations with them and some other folks that we can partner with. And that's really exciting because there is, I think, a mechanism for us to leverage funding and understanding that our resources are definitely limited. So that's going to be super important. Also wanted to point out that we did send the letter requesting a breakdown on racial and ethnic data from the the state, and that went out, but we just heard that Governor Hogan is actually has announced during his press briefing that he is going to be providing that. Our data, our letter did have very specific requests, so I think it's great that we did send it, and I think we need to obviously work on that very carefully. Councilman Jawando and I have sort of volunteered to set up a team to really follow up also locally. And this is so important because it really does dovetail to our racial equity and social justice legislation. But I know all of you have been really eager to understand how is this affecting us as we, with great concern, monitor what's happening in other states and cities, and it's really, really, truly heartbreaking. And so we need to understand this as soon as possible because it really speaks to how we can then target more, communication or target more resources, assistance, and things of this sort. So I'm glad that we sort of started in that path, and I look forward to working with, obviously, all of you as we set up this team and as we stand up this team. Finally, I just wanted to share that I also began some preliminary conversations with Gene Smith from the 6th floor regarding some communications that we have received from some of our private sector partners about post-COVID-19 recovery, economic, outlook, reshaping of our economy. I believe that this is a layer that we can approach, sort of layering on to the economic development platform. We are very focused right now on the crises, but very soon we need to start thinking about, obviously, what is our economy going to look like, not only here in Montgomery County, but regionally. And so in conversations with COG partners, understanding, everybody who's thinking about this, of course, the Fuller Institute has put forward some reports. We have folks here from Montgomery County in the private sector that have started to ask questions. And so I think it would be great for us to perhaps leverage OLO and some other partners to begin that work so that when we are, over this crisis, we're not just starting to think about it, but that at least we have some kind of a roadmap, some kind of a blueprint. So as we, think of this a little further, obviously we'll be sending you guys just some of the information and the preliminary conversations and thoughts so that we can all work together on this. And this obviously has to be a council-led, I think, blueprint so that we can visibly, all of us, take a piece of this and run with it, because there's no doubt that post-COVID-19 is going to bring an absolutely, completely different economic snapshot. And I think that the good news, I think, is that everybody's going to start from sort of scratch. And the other good news is that I think Montgomery County is poised to respond very quickly to all of this. So I'll be, sharing some of this with all of you, and obviously Councilmember Reamer, who leads our Fed committee, will, play a significant role in this. But I feel very strongly that as hard as it is, that we've got to sort of, chew gum and walk at the same time and be ready for that particular moment in time. Thank you, everybody. And again, I just want to express publicly how much I appreciate the fact that everybody has just stepped up and that all of us are doing multiple things. So we're doing it in a collaborative fashion. And I am always eager to help in any way possible because I know everybody has very full plates. But the more that we work together, I think the better the outcome. So thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. And I want to echo a lot of what Nancy just said. I've been so proud of this body over the last 2 months. Dozens of conversations with each of you, sometimes at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, as we troubleshoot and try to put out fires across the county. And really do want to express my appreciation for the partnership with the executive branch as we have tried to tighten our social safety net through this extraordinarily difficult time. I just have a couple of updates. One, first, to talk a little bit about this multicultural team that has been put together to expand outreach, and then second, to give sort of a general HHS update. But Councilor Navarro, for many years, has been beating the drum of needing to expand community relations and services and PR to our multicultural communities as have a number of you on this council and previous councils. And we saw, as the crisis really began to hit, why it's so critically important for us to have a very solid structure and strategy in place to reach our communities. As we've been reading in the newspapers, significantly disproportionately, our minority communities, but in particular our multi-ethnic and multicultural and multi-immigrant communities are disproportionately being impacted by this. And so while on the challenging side, it exposed a lot of issues that should have been addressed a long time ago, on the good news side, we have worked tirelessly to create a new team. And I do want to acknowledge the executive branch, and in particular Ken Hartman, who was tasked with leading this new group within the executive branch to help be able to translate information and provide that strategy. And on a parallel track, the council has also developed a team, and I want to acknowledge all of my colleagues. I think almost every office who has a multilingual staff person has stepped up to assist both with public relations, but also with translations and general communication out to our multicultural communities. And I think that will obviously expand and increase moving forward. But when the dust settles from all of this, I think there will be an opportunity for us to figure out what went well and what we can build off of and have a stronger infrastructure moving forward. And it's been a joy and privilege working with Councilmember Navarro and her team in building this unit. And again, want to express my appreciation for everybody on the council for assisting and supporting in that effort. From an HHS perspective, starting about 3 weeks ago, we began having weekly phone calls, inviting Dr. Crowell and Ms. Vicki Buckland, the Chief Operating Officer from HHS, as well as key leadership from HHS, to provide the HHS committee, and by extension, each of you have either your chief of staff or your liaison to the HHS committee has been participating in these calls. They are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and this is an opportunity for us to hear directly from HHS with regards to their operations and what they're working on, but also an opportunity for us to share with them constituent calls that have come in from various organizations. I have found these calls to be extraordinarily productive. We've been able to troubleshoot issues and forge a strong partnership and alliance. And just some of the headlines in terms of what HHS is working on right now. And I do want to also acknowledge that Dr. Crowell and his team are working around the clock on this issue. As we all know, the ramifications of this are hard to process because we're dealing with the immediate crisis before us. But we know moving forward with the looming recession and looming economic challenges that is going to significantly really hurt our social safety net. And so that's something that we've been working on. I do want to acknowledge we have opened 2 additional homeless shelters, and I again want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Glass, who represents all of us as our lead on homeless and vulnerable communities and has been working closely with Amanda Harris and Interfaith Works and MCCH and other providers in that space that have done unbelievable work to step up their efforts and address the needs of the community. I also want to thank the City of Rockville, who partnered with the county to expand the contract that we have at Taft Court so that we have more options available for our homeless community, so we're not concentrating everybody within small, tight spaces, but we're spreading folks out to keep everyone as safe as possible. And we are getting numerous, and I mean numerous calls from nonprofit organizations who have also stepped up and acknowledged that they have capacity issues right now, and they are working with the executive branch to adjust or amend their contracts so that they can meet the needs of county residents in real time. But we are starting to see an issue of some of these organizations having cash on hand issues, and so we are working on ensuring that they have cash advances so that they can address all of the needs that they have moving forward. There are some issues, though, that we as a body, I think, are going to need to do as much as we can to support. PPE is a huge issue for these organizations who, by virtue of their work, cannot socially distance, particularly those folks in group homes that have to feed and clothe and bathe some of these residents who are in nursing homes, but also who are severely disabled. And the lack of PPE is alarming. And we learned just yesterday that MCCH have staff members that have tested positive for COVID-19, and understandably, there's great anxiousness and anxiety among that organization and their team. And so we will be working with the administration. I know that these supplies are in short supply, but it's critically important that we provide these organizations and their staff with the tools and resources that they need to be able to perform their jobs effectively, but to keep themselves and their families and their clients safe. So that's something that we're working on. Councilmember Navarro mentioned the philanthropic community has stepped up in a very significant way, and I want to acknowledge the Montgomery County Community Foundation, Anna Hargrave, and a number of other foundations and individual donors who have set up a fund within the Community Foundation and through the Family Independence Initiative are also looking at expanding direct giving and providing more direct cash family assistance and assistance to those organizations that are on the front lines. And we're working with them to, as best as possible, strategically make sure the money and the resources are going where they're needed most. And the last two things I'll mention, I do also want to credit the executive branch. They are working to quickly turn around the criteria for the $5 million. And so as we receive information, we will be sharing that with colleagues so that everybody can provide input into that process, because collectively, I think it will end up being a lot stronger. And the goal of the administration, as shared by Dr. Crowell yesterday, is to have an application available as early as next week that people will be able to pursue. But it will take all of us and our community-based partners and everybody to make sure that people know that these resources are available and how to access them. And we're also working to make sure that they are culturally sensitive and appropriate, and that there's a way for folks to be able to apply who may not speak English as their first language. So that's something that we are working on too. And I'll stop there to see if anybody has any questions. But again, want to thank my colleagues, and I also want to thank Councilmember Rice, who's the third member of our HHS committee, whom we've had many phone calls just in the last 2 days. And so appreciate his and his team's efforts as well. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Remo.
Thank you. Well, this is an incredible moment. This has been, first I want to, of course, thank everyone for all the collaborative work. Earlier today, I sent around a message on behalf of Councilmember Albernoz and myself about a proposed Board of Health regulation. Board of Health, the council acting as the Board of Health, we believe needs to recommend a measure around facial coverings. If you go to a store right now, if you get on a bus, if you get grocery pickup, you will see many workers who are unprotected, whether because they're not wearing a facial mask or the customers in the store are not wearing them. We're seeing more adoption of this, but I really think the failure of the CDC to take a strong early position on masks, to defer to a meaningless social norm, is going to go down as one of many great failings, the other being the failure to create adequate testing capacity early on, which has had just profound implications for us. So, there's no reason we can't be more forceful than the CDC has been. And so before you now is a measure. Well, it's not before the council. It'll be introduced next week's session, and I hope acted upon at that time, as the council president has indicated. It'll be in the packets, that will be in advance of council session next year on the council's website, and I will put it up on my blog and encourage everyone to share it and consider what changes might be needed. But the basic idea is we're seeing now grocery store workers are starting to die. They are contracting the virus from people who, just like our own MCCH staff, are exposed constantly. I would note that I'm glad the county executive has provided masks for county employees. Those are now being delivered to county employees. We need to do the same by the private sector. And the quickest and most effective way we can do that is to issue a Board of Health regulation. So again, it would first cover all employees in essential sectors, and then it would second cover customers. There would be a phasing of a week. I do not think it's necessary for people to purchase, certainly not N95 masks. Those are for healthcare only. But facial coverings, the CDC has provided now belatedly a lot of guidance about different types of facial coverings. There are many options you can make at home. You do not have to buy anything in order to be more protected and to protect people around you more than just going without any facial covering. So although it is late, and there's no question in my mind, we should have embraced this, very early. We also know that, we don't know how long the current status will continue, and we know that there will likely be a resurgence in the fall and perhaps next spring. So, it's time to put a better policy in place for the future. We are also working on an appropriation to support the county's acquisition of additional masks. As you know, I reached out to the community over the weekend and encouraged mask adoption, and I requested information about local manufacturing of masks. One of the emails I got was from a friend who is in the general counsel's office at Custom Inc., which is a company that manufactures apparel for big events. Big events have all been shut down. So you have an apparel manufacturer with nothing to make. They have pivoted to making masks. And as a result, on Wednesday, tomorrow, 40,000 masks are arriving for Montgomery County employees and other critical users to begin getting a little bit more protection. It's not the best protection. The best protection would be N95. Sadly, again, from the federal level down, there's been a failure to produce enough N95 respirator masks, for our critical needs. But again, we're hearing that something is better than nothing. So I want to thank all the people who have responded. I've received so many emails from people who are making face shields at home, and they're donating them to hospitals and nursing homes. And as a result of the email, many more people are saying, I've got a 3D printer. My son or my daughter has a 3D printer. We can make more. So that network is really starting to come together. Our Councilmember Rice will remember this, our wizards.exe. I remember the proclamation for that amazing robotics team. The whole council will remember that group of young people. They have made hundreds of masks. They have 3D printing capability, and they are donating it to hospitals. And just such an inspiring story in this terrible moment. But we're hearing from seamsters and seamstresses and tailors and people who are hobbyists that they would like to make masks. So working with the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and the amazing team at Procurement, Ash Shetty. I really want to just single out Ash Shetty and Jamie Cook at DGS. They have been absolutely outstanding. Some of the best work by a government employee I've seen in my time. And their experience coming into these positions has just been so relevant. And they've been able to move very fast on some incredible partnerships like the Distillery Partnerships. Jamie Cook organized that, and we're now getting our local county wineries and distilleries from the region to provide alcohol for sterilizer, sanitizer, for example, but also the 3D printing shields, the local manufacturing, the mass production. So those shields are coming online, and DGS and procurement are working with those who want to produce them to get them into a supply chain for the healthcare providers. So if anyone out there knows of someone who might have a 3D printer or a sewing machine or just some time and energy and wants to help make masks it's time for a real call to action on that point. And I do think we need to build a stockpile of masks for the future. I think a stockpile of 500,000 masks, cloth masks, so that in the event of a future epidemic, we can immediately get them out to residents in apartment communities and bus riders and nursing homes and everywhere. I have to say I was so disappointed to recently read guidance that a nursing home had on its website for visitors. The nursing home actively discouraged visitors to the nursing home from wearing masks. And that is because of the CDC's guidance from the top down. So you had people visiting relatives in nursing homes throughout this entire pandemic without taking the most basic precaution. It's just heartbreaking, and it's tragic. So having said that, I think it's clear that what is going to enable us to get control over this, the policy experts are saying it is about testing, it's about your health system's capacity, it's about contact tracing, and ultimately producing a downward path of contagion or of spreading. We've taken action on the health system capacity. We've heard many briefings. The county health officer previously identified a gap of 600 beds, and they are working towards that goal, and they're optimistic that they will have all 600 beds covered by the time the peak of the surge hits. As Councilmember Albert knows well, he's been working with the hospitals on their planning initiative, and the council appropriated $10 million towards those kinds of expenses last week to support that surge capacity. On testing, that is really a glaring problem, a crisis. We've been limited by the federal framework. We are now reaching out to our local life sciences industry, and there is indeed a good possibility of developing our own testing capacity with companies that have lab space in the National Capital Biohealth region. So we're crossing our fingers on progress on that front, but it would be probably the biggest thing that we could do now to get control of the virus and get the economy in a position to return would be to get testing up to the level where anyone with symptoms can get a test. I also want to thank the school system for its incredible work. A number of years ago, as the school system began its transition to digital learning, there was a lot of resistance. A lot of people made false assertions about Wi-Fi and radiation and health. We still hear that a lot today. Thank goodness the council acted in the past to support the transition to digital learning, because there are school districts in this country that have said we're done for the year. It's over. And I know a lot of parents might frankly prefer that right now to having to try to manage a child's education. This is a moment of peak appreciation for teachers and the incredible work that they do. What a difference they can make and how hard their jobs are. And as a parent of 2 students, I certainly share that. But the fact that we have a digital platform now to rely upon in this moment is something we should not take for granted. It's there because we made decisions to support the school system. The school system is so high performing, and it took this on. So the final point I want to make, I continue to be very concerned about our community's access to unemployment insurance. I think that we are relying upon the cash subsidy of unemployment insurance to allow the economy to rebound. That is the thing that will enable people to pay rent, to buy groceries, to go back out and spend money once again. As of yet, it's really difficult to get through the state system. I'm very worried that there are a lot of workers who don't realize that they qualify. I really thank my colleagues for their leadership on language access issues. Councilmember Navarro, Councilmember Albernoz, that is an essential part of the problem. But we have to get out there and communicate to every single person about their eligibility for unemployment insurance. So I've asked the WorkSource Montgomery for a plan that I hope will come to us very soon to raise awareness and communicate with the community about how, what is the general criteria for eligibility and how to proceed to access those benefits. So thank you very much for everyone's incredible work in this time. Thanks.
Councilmember Glaze.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's nice to see all of your faces. It's nice to see you. It's been a little while, so I want to thank our central staff, council staff, for being able to move the council into 21st century, into the year 2022. We've tried out Skype. Now we're trying out Zoom, and I look forward to the next technological adventure we'll all take together while maintaining social distancing. Without restating everything that everybody has said, and I really appreciate everything everybody has said and has done, quite frankly. You know, we have such a large government here in Montgomery County that one of the things I appreciate about this body is everyone is finding ways to be helpful without tripping over each other, without superseding each other. There is so much good work to be done, and collectively we are doing that in concert with the executive branch and the whole team of county government behind us. So thank you all for making this a team effort. I really do appreciate that. I just want to touch on one particular point that the chair of the HHS committee, Councilmember Albornoz, mentioned. I've been receiving a lot of comments from individuals directly to me on social media and in other venues regarding people who are experiencing homelessness. So I just want to take this as an opportunity to provide more of an update on where we are in county government. Daily conversations with DHHS and Amanda Harris's staff, I am, and as has been noted, there have been 2 rec centers that have been converted into shelters, which I think is a really good repurposing of county facilities at a time when people can't go to rec centers. I think there are more opportunities within county government to rethink some of our facilities and infrastructures, and look forward to engaging even more in those conversations, not necessarily as shelters, but as other gathering places or places where people can pick up supplies, critical supplies, I should say. For individuals who are either at one of the shelters run by any of our nonprofit organizations, at the 2 rec centers, there's also a number of individuals who are at motels that are there for their own safety and for the safety of other people who are experiencing homelessness, not wanting to be in any of those other established facilities. Right now we have about 55 people in hotel rooms, so they are self-quarantined, and DHHS staff is on call to support them as necessary, and there's capacity for a few dozen more who, at the slightest hint of being sick, they will be placed into a safer facility, which is what the hotels and motels are for. So a lot of questions I received on that, and want folks to know that we are taking that safety precaution step. And then, you know, the staff of Interfaith Works and the Coalition, Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless, and any of the other nonprofit service providers, they are doing yeoman's work day in and day out. Not only are they essential personnel for making our community safe, but they're putting themselves at risk. And that needs to be noted. These individuals are the glue that keeps our social safety net strong. And we all need to continue applauding them and thanking them for their efforts. And part of the money that we allocated just last week for the social safety net and the Department of Health and Human Services will go to make sure that these frontline personnel are compensated appropriately. You know, the price differential, the salary differential between some of these frontline staff helping our most vulnerable and those who are flipping burgers is not that much. And in this day and age, it's a lot safer to be in front of a grill and making fries than it is tending to the most vulnerable who are sick and who need 24/7 care. And so I appreciate our efforts to provide the support that's necessary to keep those staff in place. And then lastly, not only are the people who are getting paid to do all of this work, do they need to be applauded, but I am so heartened every time I open up, one of my social media platforms to see our neighbors, our civic groups, our houses of worship and other organizations who are stepping up. And on their own, they are delivering food, they're making face masks, they're caring for their elderly neighbors. This is what makes our community awesome. This is what makes us vibrant. This is what makes us resilient. And this is why we are all in this together. And so I just want to thank all of the Montgomery County residents who, without being asked, without being directed, are taking care of their neighbors and making sure that we remain a strong place to live, work, and play. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you to all my colleagues for having council session in this format. As I think it was Evan who said, it's nice to see everyone's face, and I purposely have my screen on so I can see everybody at the same time, and it's nice to see us all here. I want to just add a couple of things that I've been working on, and I couldn't agree more with the point that's been made, how we all have kind of come together to work on different things that are all helping the community, and as almost as a choir that's on tune, and we know we have more to do, but I really appreciate working with this team. Just to start, it was mentioned that the great work of MCPS, I want to echo that and thank Councilmember Rice for his work and keeping in touch with all of them and keeping us up to speed. As Councilmember Alvarez and I often talk about having 4 kids, very young kids under 9. We have much appreciation for the teachers, but also for parents and caregivers who are trying to work at home and take care and be teacher at the same time. And I want to include my wife and so many other caregivers and parents and guardians in that. Thanks, because we know that's hard. I have started a virtual story time that for some reason I committed to do it every weekday until the crisis is over. So I'm on, I just did day 15 today, and it's on my Facebook page, and it's a partnership with the Montgomery County Public Libraries, which are closed because of our social distancing and health requirements, also with Friends of the Library and Biz Arts. And so I would encourage anyone who needs 30 minutes of break at 11:30 a.m. Eastern and wants to get story time. We're working with librarians. We're even singing now. It's developed greatly. So who knows what will happen by the time it's over. And I want to thank Councilmember Alvarez, who's been on, and we've had some bilingual. I'm hoping with technology we can have other members and other special guests of my colleagues and others on. So that's something I want to make sure the public knew about. It's so important that our kids are getting that literacy, are getting that learning, and the parents and caregivers are getting that break. And so that's on my Facebook page and on Instagram. I also wanted to thank Councilmember Navarro. It's great to work with her on this racial disparities work. I'm glad to hear the governor's announcement that he's going to have the health department release available data. But we sent a letter today that also emphasized the need to direct private labs to collect the racial data, because that's a gap. And right now, I think somewhere around 10% or so of the forms that are coming in have the racial data. And while that is a good sample size, we need to know more. And so I know our health director, Travis Gales, feels the same way. And we're not going to wait, because we know the disparities were already there. We're going to take action now. And so I look forward to working with Councilmember Navarro and the whole team and the executive on this, because it's going to take all of us. To the point of keeping our workers and frontline employees safe, I introduced last week, and I appreciate many of my colleagues co-sponsoring the suspension of the bag tax that will take up next Tuesday to pass. That is something that is already responding to something that's happening at our grocery stores and retail stores, where bags are either being not allowed reusable bags or they're not packing them themselves. And again, to Councilmember Reamer's point about how exposed our grocery store workers and others are, we need to limit potential transmission in all ways possible. And so while the bag tax is something that I'm supportive of as an environmental policy, I think we're having to look at things in a different way at this point, particularly as we head into the next 1 to 2 to 3 weeks of our probable surge, that we are limiting transmission in all ways possible. And so I'm hopeful that we will pass that and it'll go into effect on Tuesday to limit that type of transmission. I also wanted to mention some work I've been involved in along with others on protecting our renters. We need a federal solution for renters and people who own homes, that we need a holiday from having to pay, because even the landlords are having trouble. They have to pay. Energy costs are up. There's problems all the way along the continuum. But many people are struggling to have, if they haven't paid their April rent yet, they may have just paid something or paid partial, and they don't know what they're going to do with May. We were able to halt evictions and foreclosures, which is good, and worked with the sheriff and the judge to do that, and the governor stepped up and did that as well. But we need to limit the cost in an ongoing fashion. We have limited authority here at the county level, but I'll be introducing the bill on Tuesday with the council president at this point, and hopefully others who have co-sponsored, to have the emergency rent stabilization so that the rents cannot be raised during this crisis, during the health emergency. And we have gotten several reports, which I'll talk about next week, of leases ending and rent going up 20, 30, 40%, which is obviously untenable for people at this time. So I'll be introducing that emergency rent stabilization bill on Tuesday, and hope that my colleagues will support that. My office, and I want to thank all of Central staff who's working on a resource list as well, and all of my team, all of Team Councilmember Jawando's office. We put together a pretty robust, very robust and comprehensive resource list at the federal, state, and local level. Whether you're a small business, a nonprofit, you're looking for unemployment insurance, you're looking for help on the health side of things, and it's on my website at montgomerycountymd.gov/Jawando, and I know the council staff is working on a comprehensive list as well, and so I wanted to make sure people knew that that resource list was available. And then finally, I wanted to mention, Councilmember Reamer brought up the mask issue, and I agree with you. I really think we need to act on that. The Washington Post this weekend, if you got the paper, actually had a full diagram of how to cut out and make your own cloth mask in the paper. I know we actually did it as an art project with our kids, and I would encourage, if you still have your Sunday paper laying around, pick that up, and it's very well done. It's the right size, it's proportional, and it has the instructions there as well. You can basically lay the cloth on top and cut around it. And I just think we all have to do this. We're all in this together. We got to keep each other safe. And I would just encourage people from every community, stay home, listen to the stay-at-home order, especially these next couple of weeks as we're trying to limit the transmission so that we can get out of this. And I know we will get out of this. And I want to thank all of my colleagues. Really proud of the work we did last week to help support our small businesses and our nonprofits and our hospitals and our homeless population and all of our vulnerable residents, with the largest package, I think, in the region at $36 million, which you heard at the beginning of this session. That's really a testament to all the work that we're all doing in our various capacities. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank my colleagues.
Thank you. And just on a note on the masks, it was not an art project for my wife, but Sally made one for her and me, and I'm wearing it. So she did a very good job. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge publicly the amazing work of our multicultural communications team. Number one, everybody did a great job working with the executive branch. I want to say that Ken Hartman has really stepped in an amazing way. But we also have, I think, an amazing team led by Lillian Mass and Carolyn Chen. And then we also put together a team of council member staff, which has been amazing. And I just want to shout them out because, everybody is just going above and beyond. So we also, we have Lillian Massified and Caroline Chen, we have Juan Jovel, we have Crystal Park and Mayra Cruz Solis that are part of the communications office. And we also have, Lilian Cruz with Councilmember Albornoz, Mayra Bayonet, Councilmember Albornoz, David Lorenzo Botelo from Councilmember Glass, Julio Murillo from Councilmember Hucker, Melissa Dinegro, Councilmember Reamer, Fatmata Berry, Councilmember Joando, and Becca Sarsosimo from my office, who's been just amazing. I just wanted to shout them out because this, of course, has been such a, stressful time. And we all acknowledge very early on that given who we are in Montgomery County, if we don't do whatever it takes to disseminate information, factual information to our non-English dominant community, then we're all at risk because if they don't have the appropriate information about social distancing and things of that nature, it's going to be really, really hard. I think it was also really awesome to discover that, for example, we have Marche Salu, who is our social media specialist, but she also, of course, speaks Amharic and French. And so for the first
Look, it doesn't even hang up. It's still on.
Again?
The sound is back on.
Okay.
Back on.
All good.
I wanted to just echo what Will said about the importance of what we did last week. That package was very well thought out, I thought, very balanced. We're all struggling to get our arms around a really complicated crisis, both a public health crisis and an economic recession, and they're both growing in real time. But I thought we had a really thoughtful response. I'm a little concerned that a whole week has gone by and we don't have the small business grant application, posted yet. And so I've been in touch with the executive branch. I hope that'll happen soon. Our small businesses are really hurting. There will be time to, it'll take time to process these. The state and the federal government have not been quite as nimble, and that money's not on the street either. So I really think it's important that the county step forward and the executive branch take action on our initiative last week. I also wanted to thank Hans for the leadership on the retail workers and co-sponsor that Board of Health order, if that's what we do next week. I've been concerned about our retail workers for quite a while, been looking into this. I was in touch, it feels like probably 2 weeks ago now, with the state when the governor issued his executive order, because I was urging them to cover retail workers as essential workers, as other states had already done, just 2 or 3 states at that point. And that is really critical to allow our retail workers to access childcare, since they don't have the option of being at home on Zoom like us, but they have to go to work and somebody else has to take care of their children. So I was glad that they were included in the executive order, and we should do everything that we can do to make sure that they have the personal protective equipment that they need. I think the first responsibility really goes to these large employers, like our large grocery chains that are doing quite well right now. Anybody that doubts that should look in the paper goods or the cleaning supplies aisle. But for any employers that have trouble accessing PPE, or any of the small employers, the county should absolutely be stepping in and filling those gaps to keep our retail workers safe. So anyway, thanks also for that initiative, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And by popular demand, Councilmember Glass asked me to put this on just to demonstrate it. And all it is that Sally figured out, I mean, she saw it in the paper, that she figured out that she had a cloth, we had cloth, and she took rubber bands and hooked it around, and then she took a paper clip and put it over so I can put it around my nose. And I have to tell you, it works. So I don't know whether Councilmember
Sally.
I don't know whether Councilmember Glass just wanted me to wear it for protection or just because he didn't want to see me. But anyhow, thank you very much. You did a great job. And thank you, Councilmember Hucker. And next is Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Council President, and I will put in my order as well for one of those masks that is far better than my craftsmanship over here in Bethesda. But first of all, I just wanted to echo all the comments that have been made by colleagues. I think today has demonstrated, building upon last week and the collaborative nature that this body has been able to come together to really address and attack the crisis and provide the type of leadership from the county council that the county deserves and that our community needs. And so I'm just very grateful to have been able to work with each of you at this critical time. It's been challenging, it's been stressful, it's been a lot, but we really do have a tremendous amount of talent and leadership on this county council, and it has been for all to see, and it really has benefited the residents of Montgomery County, and I'm really proud to have been able and continue to be able to work together through the various challenges that we are going to face together. And I think it's not just us. I think we're embodying what the county has shown. I mean, our community is great because so many people in it are good, and I can't tell you how many folks who've reached out to our office, and certainly the needs have grown through this crisis in a variety of different ways. The concern and the anxiety is palpable, but just as many people have reached out to me personally and to our office to ask for help as have offered help and reached out to see how they could be part of the solution to the challenges we face. And many of the things that you heard about businesses stepping up to change what they manufacture and create, businesses stepping up to provide resources to frontline hospital workers, neighbors, looking after neighbors, looking after the most vulnerable in their community, some of our aging population who can't go to the grocery store, who can't leave the house because they are in the high-risk category, and some of our faith-based and nonprofit partners who have stepped in to fill the void where we can. It's just been extraordinary, and the best aspect of our community and the character that is demonstrated through crisis, has really been on full display in Montgomery County, and I think as difficult as this is for all of us, we also have to appreciate how fortunate we are to live in such a great place as Montgomery County and to be able to share this community together. In speaking of that, I got to join this morning with Chief Jones on the crime stat meeting. Now it is a virtual meeting with the police department that the leadership gets together, and I got to join that call to get a briefing and hear what's happening in our community, but also really just to say thank you to the police department and the folks who are doing their best to keep our community safe, but also to keep our community calm at a time when it is really difficult. And I just wanted to reiterate my appreciation here for the gratitude that was shared there. It's a difficult time to be an officer where the laws and executive orders are changing on a day-by-day basis. There's a lot of confusion in the community, and for everybody to be able to work together to understand what is and isn't allowed, what we ought to be doing and what we ought not to be doing, what is an essential trip, is really important, and they've really been an important resource and partner in making sure that is the case, which I really appreciate. Also wanted to just make a quick plug. On Friday, my office we normally do Fridays with Friedson. We're going virtual for that, of course. We've canceled previous ones at the beginning of this crisis, but we don't want to stop them from occurring. And so we are going to have a virtual Friday with Freaks, and it's going to be themed. Generally, there's no agenda, but whatever's on your mind. But in this particular case, we thought it'd be a good idea to have a themed version of it. And we're going to focus on mental health and wellness, prioritizing that at a time of crisis. We recognize the challenges and anxiety and uncertainty that this time has created for so many individuals and so many families in our community. And so at 10 o'clock on Friday, that will be a virtual meeting, and encourage anybody to join us. And we'll have some expertise from folks and me, who will happen to be there, who doesn't have expertise, but wants to make sure that we're prioritizing that. I think, as we stay home and as we do all the things that we need to do, it's also important that everybody prioritizes their own mental health and wellness, get out for exercise, for a walk, practice social distancing, and make sure you're staying safe, but making sure that there are priorities, and one of them needs to be taking care of yourself. So I just want to make sure we highlight that. Did want to thank, in addition to colleagues, the council staff has been mentioned before. The briefing that we got in the beginning about participation through the process is a really critical aspect that many of us have been working on. Councilmember Jawanda sent a memo to colleagues. All of us have reached out in different ways, suggesting various ways for members of the community to be able to participate. I shared, I know others did as well, the interest in having video as an option so that we could watch to try to recreate what we normally would have in other times. And I just appreciate the staff stepping up to make sure that could happen, so that we are limiting presence but not participation, because that is really what makes democracy work. And so I really appreciate colleagues' commitment to that, which is a shared council priority, but the staff's ability to execute in a difficult circumstance, to be able to make sure that can happen while balancing security and the other aspects that we need to. And the last thing that I just wanted to reiterate and really build off of what Councilmember Hucker mentioned, this body came together last week and moved swiftly and in unprecedented speed to meet the needs of the moment and the crisis that we face for a comprehensive package, $36.5 million, which touched on just about every aspect of the crisis, recognizing we may need to do more and we may need to continue to look at it, but it really was a critical first step, and I think we are leaders in the region in doing so. I share the significant disappointment that we still don't have specifics on when these applications are going to be available. The actions that the council took last week were critical, but they don't help the businesses that need it. They don't help the nonprofits. They don't help residents who are struggling at a time of economic crisis. And the only thing that's going to help them is actually getting the applications up and getting the funding out as quickly as possible. As we said when it was introduced, as we reiterated last week, DC's program, the applications were up within a week. We are now at a week, and we need to meet the moment that we're in. And we need to get this program up and running. It needs to be fast. The support needs to occur, and it needs to happen as soon as possible. I appreciate Councilmember Hucker for raising that. I want to reiterate that. I think it is of the utmost importance, and there is nothing clearer in the package than the need for speed in terms of getting the funding out as quickly as possible to help those who desperately need it. And so I just wanted to use this opportunity to reiterate that point, to highlight and reemphasize what Councilman Hucker said, and make sure that we are moving in the urgency that this moment requires, because our businesses and nonprofits and the workers who who rely on them are depending on it. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. I just wanted to say a special note of appreciation to all the county employees who are on the front lines, the police and fire and the HHS and everybody who's out there in a circumstance where they're interacting with other people. Obviously we know the safest way to get through this and avoid contracting the virus is to have no contact with other people. but there are a lot of people in jobs where, we need them. We need them out taking care of the community. So that is absolutely our county employees who are frontline, interacting with other residents, and of course it's also private sector workers, as has been mentioned, those essential services that must continue. So I really have a tremendous respect and appreciation for everyone who is getting out of bed in the morning right now, and they know that they have to go out into an environment that is uncertain and scary. So we thank you, the county thanks you, and I am very pleased that we have an agreement, or the executive has reached an agreement for a hazard pay. I think that's necessary. So we look forward to taking that up very soon. But anyway, just thank you for what you're doing. This community is really, truly grateful. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and not to be outdone, my eighth grader is actually designing some of these masks, so just wanted to share with you. There are a couple that are here, so I think we have a bidding war, but she's actually got them in multiple different kinds of colors and patterns. Again, the seriousness about this is, and I think that for all of us who have kids or know folks who are handy, make sure that they're doing this. I tasked her with making some not only for the household, but also for other folks in the community, being able to give back and donate. And folks just need to be creative in the ways that they can help. Folks who have food. I was at Manna yesterday and practiced my proper social distancing. We try and minimize the amount we can do, but certainly people were still dropping off food. Our food pantries still need assistance, even with the additional money that we're putting forth. If you have food in your pantries that you can donate, that you're not going to use, non-perishable items, canned goods, pastas, things like that, they go a long way to help. I know that we had some stuff, and I brought that with me and put that in the bin when I went there. These are the kinds of things that each of us can do to do our own part to helping our community, helping out our fellow neighbors. And so I just want to encourage folks again, there's nothing that you can't do. You don't need a lot of money to be able to do it. You can do it on your own, and even volunteering. Even though we need to, minimize the amount of time that's out there, the warehouse still needs help. All those kinds of entities that are on the front lines, and I know Councilmember Albornoz has been working with our nonprofits, Nonprofit Montgomery and others. They really still need people out there because understandably a lot of people are scared and don't want to come out. And so because of that, they're actually having challenges getting the work done. And, so from that perspective, whatever we can do, we have the power. We have a great community that's always stepped up. And so I just encourage everyone, find their own way in which they can help and do something, make a difference in the community and help out their fellow council person, their county member in their community. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will let Sally know that it's not competition, but it's good. It always keeps you on your toes when you have someone that has something else to do as well. I have no other colleagues that wanted to speak at this point. So I did want to thank everyone for all that you're doing. And that includes not only our colleagues, but our staff and our first responders and other county staff and our nonprofit partners and our for-profit partners as well. There are people that literally are saving lives each and every day. Now, I need a motion for a proposed closed session to discuss public security. If the public body determines that the public discussion would constitute a risk to the public or public security, including the deployment of fire and police services and staff, and the development of implementation of emergency plans pursuant to Maryland Code General Provisions, Article 3-305B, subsection 10.w. The topic is COVID-19 emergency plans. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It was moved by Councilmember Albornoz and seconded by Councilmember Navarro. Yes. And now this is going to be for the first time ever. Will all those in favor please raise their hand so I can see it? I don't know where my hand is. And that carries 9-0. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.